Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new video. Today I wanted to go over another awesome 10 RuneLite plugins. There are so many useful ones. I made a previous video on this. I will leave a link in the description for that. So if you think there is something missing from the list, it's probably on the last video. Also, since then there has been some new plugins added into the game and also some removed, so just keep that in mind. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoy and let's get started. So one of the more recent additions to RuneLite is the status bar plugin. Now, this is what it does. It's the actual plugin is called Status Bars, and when you turn it on, it'll put some little bars for your HP and prayer right beside your inventory. Now, this is useful for a couple reasons. For one, this is very small up here, and two, naturally, your vision will be looking at your inventory quite frequently because that's where you're going to go to heal your HP. So if I guzzle the Dwarven Rock Cake, you can see my HP going down on the side there. And there's also a little flash to help remind you. Now on top of that, when you hover over certain items, it's going to show you exactly how much of the bar it's going to fill. So it gives you a nice visual representation of it. So if you drink a prayer potion, boom, all the way up there. So you'll know exactly how much HP and prayer you have at all time. Also, it's just very non-intrusive. It really feels like it fits into your inventory screen and doesn't take up any extra space because really that space was not getting used at all. If we turn it off, yeah, it's just kind of useless bars, so nothing really lost. Okay, coming up next is the bank tag feature, which is also a reasonably new feature. Now what this does is increases your diversity for sorting in your bank. Now they are pretty much the same as tabs, except they don't actually move into a separate location. So you will need to set this up. So once you turn the plugin on, it'll be called the bank tags plugin. You will notice that there will be a separate bar going down the left side, which will be for tags. Now this will not actually move your items around, but it will sort as if you kind of search for that item. So for potions, let's just drag a bunch of potions in here, but you'll see they will not actually move from your inventory at all. We will just chuck all of our potions in here. Okay, so once we're done, we'll click on our shovel. For some reason, maybe we can change that icon, and we can see it just sorted all of our potions. But if we go back to our main tabs, it has not actually changed locations at all, so it will not mess with your main bank organization or any other sorting you may have set up. So if you want to change the icon, you have to right click on it, click the change icon button, and then click on another item. So if we click on the prayer potion, it'll switch over to our prayer potions. If we want to add a new tag, we'll just put in maybe runes, and then we'll go ahead and just drag all of our runes in there, simple as that. And then we'll just quickly change the icon and we're good to go. So it'll be really useful to set up a food tag, a potion tag, and just other smaller subcategories of existing tabs or just anything you really want. Anyway, a super useful plugin. Okay, coming in at number 3 is a very simple plugin, but one that actually has a ton of uses and helps a lot, is the metronome plugin. What the metronome plugin will do is put a metronome to the different ticks in RuneScape. So you can set it to 1 tick, 4 ticks, 3 ticks, however many ticks you want, it will count it for you. You just have to come down here to the metronome section, turn it on, and I would go to the settings. You can set it to a few different options. You can go pretty much as many ticks as you want, and it's going to count perfectly 6 ticks, and then put a metronome dot. Now to hear it, you need to have actually your sound effects volume on. It's not something produced by RuneLite, it actually is produced by the client. So for example, if you're doing a basic form of prayer flicking and you want to tick it on to 4 ticks, that's going to be one of the more simple ones. Or if you want to prayer flick every 3 ticks, or a lot of people like to do it every 1 tick, this will allow you to click exactly on tick and not use any prayer points or not take any damage depending on what you're doing. However, I would turn it off if you're not using it. Coming in at number 4 is screen markers. Now this is going to be really useful for when you are skilling or are doing a task that is repeatable and you are not going to move your screen too much. So examples for places that people use this a lot is, well, mostly skilling. It used to be used a lot at agility. However, now they put in an actual plugin for agility, but for any skilling activity where you're going to be running back and forth between a similar location, it will be quite useful. So anyway, you need to come down to the screen markers section and turn it on. It will create a new tab for you. Once you come down to the screen markers tab, you can set up a new marker. So you hit on the green plus button, and you can drag one in games. So for example, we are down by the smith and we go and we want to actually mark exactly where the anvil is. So we'll make a new screen marker, drag it over there, and we'll hit OK. From here, you can increase the thickness of your line if you want. You can put a transparent color in it. You can change the edible color, like you can do anything you want. Oh, that's ugly. So it's not perfect because it's not actually moving intuitively with your screen. It's just staying in a fixed position. When we run back to the bank, it's going to stay on your screen like that. Okay, so I know I talked about this plugin quite a lot in the last week, but there's no way not to put this on the list. And number 5 is GPU rendering, probably one of the most useful technical plugins of all time. So what this plugin does is takes a load off of your processor and moves it to your graphics card, because when RuneScape 2 was created, graphics cards were not as powerful and not as widely used. But now you can actually put all that work onto your graphics card, which will increase your FPS by quite a bit. I think if we go double dot display FPS, it will display my FPS in the corner. So without it on, I have about 40 FPS, and when I'm zoomed out, about 30 FPS. With the actual GPU renderer on, it will increase it to around 50. So on top of that, it has the option to increase your draw distance. So that's the default draw distance, and if we bump it up to the maximum, which is around 60, but look how much further you can see, and you're still rocking about 50 FPS, at least for me. People with better graphics cards can of course get higher FPSs, but this is one of the plugins that really increases my game experience. And you can't actually interact with any of the objects from that far away. However, you can seem to click there sometimes, so it does have some actual uses above the default view distance. Coming in at number 6 is an awesome plugin that people use all the time but maybe forget about all of its uses, and that is the ground item plugin. Now it should be on by default, but if it's not, you're going to come down to ground items. Now look at it turned off. You can't see anything. I always forget about that when I go and play on the default client, is you can't see any of the actual item overlays on the ground. So not only does it do that, but you have the ability to hide items as well as highlight items. So if we go over to my actual settings part here, these are all of the items that I have hid over the last 6 months pretty much. It's pretty useful to put worthless items on there, or items that you would just never want to pick up, or you can just temporarily put items like big bones or something like that for a task like blood velds, because you're not going to usually be picking up the big bones and they drop them every time. So you can see while they actually did drop bones, it's not being displayed. Another way that you can quickly change items on the fly is hitting the Alt key. Doing that will bring up all the items on the ground. So if you want to hide an item, you want to click on the minus key. If you want to unhide that item, you want to click on the minus key again to re-highlight it. If you want to highlight an item, you want to hit the plus button while hitting Alt. That will turn it to your desired color. Now you can also switch that color around to, well, just make it whatever will pop most for you. Now there's also another overlay option if you want to display only highlighted items, which will take every single item that is not highlighted and non-display it. So for example, an uncut emerald, that is a somewhat valuable item. We could add that to our highlight list and take coins off. Now another option here is you can highlight tiles, which will highlight any tiles that has an item on it, which can be useful when you have a bunch of items on the ground and sometimes the text makes it hard to actually determine which tile it's on. It'll also turn the tile color to the text color that you have chosen. Coming in at number 7 is probably one of the most useful plugins for flipping, integrated right into RuneLite, and that is the Grand Exchange plugin. Now this is pretty new, so if we go ahead and look up a pretty common item, let's look up air runes. It will display the buying limit as well as the actively traded price right in the main window. Now this is pulled from the RuneScape website, so stuff like the actively traded price will not be super accurate for some items, but the buying limit will be correct, which is awesome. If we go back and look up another item like the rune scimitar, it will display it has a buy limit of 70, which is correct, as well as an actively traded price of 15,143. Now to turn this on, you need to come over to your plugins tab and go to the Grand Exchange plugin. We turn it on. Now there are a few settings here. You probably just want them all on. Now what this will actually do is add in a actual Grand Exchange tab. From here, if you're not even at the Grand Exchange, you can search up any item in the game, rune plate legs, and it will come up with any item that has rune plate legs in its name, as well as display the buying limit and the actively traded price, which is really useful if you are out and not at the Grand Exchange at all. My favorite part about this is how it displays the buy-in limits, which are pretty unknown for the most part unless you have something like GE Tracker, RuneLite, or some other third-party application that is tracking it for you. Now coming in at number 8 is a plugin that was always paid on all of the other third-party clients, except for maybe a few of them, and that is the ability to count your bank value. What this will do is go through every item in all your tabs and estimate a Grand Exchange value and add it all together to give you a total bank value. The plugin is called Bank Value. It's pretty simple. You probably just want the Grand Exchange price because the highlight price will only be really useful for Ironman accounts. So if we go ahead and turn it on, it'll take a second and it will calculate the best guess it has at your bank's value. You can go through all the tabs and it'll estimate it based on that tab as well. The other two options here are to show the high alchemy price, which again will only be really useful for Ironman accounts, but it will show you exactly where you have a lot of your high alchs. If you come over to show the exact bank value, it'll break it down into all the way down to 1 GP. It's very useful for just guesstimating your general wealth. It's not going to be 100% correct. It's based off of the Grand Exchange prices, which are not going to be 100% right, but it will give you a rough estimate on how rich you are. Coming in at number 9 is the Menu Entity Swapper. Now this is going to be used for just certain applications. If we come down here to a menu, and you can see the Menu Entity Swapper. Now it's going to have a ton of options. It'll be changing menu options around. This is generally going to be the case for things that really should be the other way. So some examples here are fairy rings. We can change the first option to, let's say, our last destination. Right now when we click on it, we're going to go to Zenaris. If we turn the Menu Entity Swapper on, our first option is going to be our last destination, which, well, let's just go there. Let's see. Some other very useful examples are swapping the exchange in the Talk To feature on the Grand Exchange representatives. You can do it for the bank as well. So if we go back to the Grand Exchange with the Menu Entity Swapper off, if we actually click on the Grand Exchange clerk, it'll just bring up a text dialog. If we turn it on again, it'll actually bring up the Grand Exchange. While you can actually click on the thing in front of them, more often than not, you'll click on the banker themselves and you'll initiate a conversation, which is not going to be that useful. One very useful application of the Menu Entity Swapper is when you can switch the bury and the use option on your bone. So if you're actually wanting to use all your individual bones on an altar for increased experience rates, you don't actually have to right click anymore. So normally you just bury the dragon bone, but with the Entity Swapper on, you can just left click and it will just use the dragon bone. It will not bury it unless you right click and hit bury bone. That's probably one of the most useful applications of this feature. And last up here, probably one of the more useful features if you are AFKing really anything, is the idle notification feature. So you need to come over here to the idle notifier plugin and you want to turn it on. Now there's a few options here. You can have a notification alert you when you are in combat, when you're about to log out, or when you're doing certain skilling activities and you stop doing that skill or animation. So if we go test it out on Bloodveld, you need to actually click off the screen for this to work. And we go ahead and kill the Bloodveld. It'll give me a notification that I am out of combat. One of the more useful ones is the logout idle notification, because that is something that happens to me all the time. I've stopped in combat and it gives me a notification in the bottom right corner saying I've received, for one, a highlighted drop. So it did notify me of the highlighted drop first. However, if we turn that off, it should notify me that I'm out of combat. Instead, it just doesn't send 2 notifications at once. So I'm clicked off the screen. We'll kill the Bloodveld here. Kill it, wait a second, and now I'm out of combat, so it sends me a notification. Really awesome for combat, skilling, or when you're just not paying attention much and you just need a bit of a reminder. Anyway guys, that is 10 more awesome RuneLite plugins to help make your RuneScape experience better, your gameplay smoother, and just generally make your whole experience much easier. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave the video a like. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time.